Alright everyone, today I wanted to talk about a very important topic that everyone is going to want to plan out at least somewhat, and that is long-term account planning. These are the kind of things that are not going to happen right away, but you're going to want to start to plan them out sooner so that you actually get them done properly. And in today's video, I wanted to cover three important topics: long-term planning for gems, long-term planning for gold, and long-term planning for how you work on your heroes. And if you guys enjoy this video and you guys want more information in the future about this kind of stuff, definitely feel free to let me know in the comments or just by leaving a quick like, and that'll let me gauge whether you guys want a follow-up to this video or not. So let's go ahead and jump into it, and let's talk about long-term planning for gems. Now, the most important thing is to have a future banner kind of set in the back of your head that you know you're going to want to summon on. And what you want to avoid is having banners pop up and not really having that question answered of, am I going to summon or am I going to skip on it? Now, this can be a little bit difficult, of course, because we don't really know extremely well what the exact next banner is going to be. However, we have a general timeline of what direction the game is going just based off of what we've seen on JP so far. And even though we've seen many differences, we could still use that general idea of what direction the game is going to kind of know what's going to be coming over the next few months for global. So having in mind what banners you want to summon on and what banners you know you're going to skip out on, what it lets you do is gather up all your free gems and really plan out exactly what you're going to do, as well as what chances you're going to give yourself of getting the units that you're really looking for. So that's a very important key, and you know, if you don't end up doing that, whether you're free to play or whether you're a spending player, you're probably going to find yourself spending gems in situations that you regret or you really don't need to. Now let's move on to another very important topic, and that is long-term planning for gold. Now this is incredibly important because there's absolutely a certain amount of gold that you always really want to leave yourself to make sure that you can work on the really important things on your account. So it's very important to keep a decent stockpile of gold for these essential things. And a lot of them are actually going to be what I'm going to talk about next, which is working on your heroes, working on your box. And a lot of the parts of working on your box are actually quite expensive that you might not even think of. And it's really easy to eat away many millions of gold just working on one or a couple of units and not even really realizing it. All the stuff like leveling up, enhancing, awakening, evolving, and limit breaking, that's going to eat up a whole bunch of gold as well. And even things like working on the ultimate move, that's also going to cost a decent amount of gold as well. Now, of course, the obvious one is working on gearing is going to eat up an insane amount of gold, but I think I'm going to save that for a separate video. So once again, if you guys enjoy this and you like the info, definitely let me know, and I'll definitely put out a future video about this sort of stuff as well. So now, when it comes to keeping that stockpile of gold, the amount really depends on how actively you're working on your box. I would say at all times, as you kind of reach the, end game stages, you're going to want to keep at least 10 million. That's just like a general safe number, but I would say the more that you're working on your box actively, evolving, awakening, doing all that sort of stuff, I would say it's not a bad idea to even keep 15 to 20 million. And if you know you're going to go on a crazy spree where you're just going to work on a whole bunch of units all at once, you might want to keep up to 30 million gold. Now, once you get past that point, though, then you're going to have excess gold, and that's what you're generally going to spend on the gear gacha. Now, just because you're going to spend it on the gear gacha doesn't necessarily mean that you want to spend it right away, because the gear gacha is always going to cost the same amount, 200,000 gold for one of these multi-pulls, unless you have keys like I do, of course. But when you run out of keys, 200,000 gold. The thing is you're going to get better rewards if you actually wait until there is a specific event going. And the two events that I would recommend waiting for the gear gacha are, one of them we've gotten many times now, that is the salvage event. You're just going to get so much gear from the gear gacha, you're obviously not going to be able to keep it all in your inventory. You're going to have to salvage a lot of it to free up space to do more pulls, and because the salvage event is running, you're going to get a lot more materials for that. So that's one of them. I think we've had, I want to say, 3 salvage events so far, maybe 4 of them since the release of the game. Now, another one, which the JP version has gotten, but we have not yet gotten on global, is a hammer event where not only do hammers have no chance to fail, but they actually double the drop rate of hammers in the gear gacha, as well as doubling the drop rate of things like the 5-star awakening stone. This is really awesome. I'm really looking forward to it, but it could still be a very long time before we see this event on Global, so I wouldn't hold out specifically for this one. I would still spend a bunch of gold if you have extra on the salvage event when it comes around for the gear gacha. But, you know, if you still want to end up doing a few pulls here and there outside of these events, that is totally fine, especially if you really need the materials and the stuff that you get from the gear gacha to actually work in progress on your account. You always have to weigh that, you know, balance is, what am I going to get by waiting and saving my resources for later versus what immediate benefits am I going to get from my account right now? And generally, the further you get along the game and the more long-term you actually think, the less immediate benefit you're going to get just by doing stuff right when you get it. So it becomes more advantageous to get the bonus by saving for a lot of these events in the future. I apologize if that was a little bit difficult of a sentence to really take in there, but if you think about what I just said, it does actually make sense. So, alright, so that's pretty much everything related to gems and gold. Now let's go into heroes, because this is a really big part of the game that you absolutely want to be thinking in the long term. Now, something I will say is a lot of this is going to depend on how much of your box you've actually completed. And the more that you've completed on your box, the less of this stuff you have to worry about. But I'm guessing most people probably watching the video have not gotten to the point where they're getting close to finishing their box. I know some people have. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm getting really close, as you guys can see, to getting everything up to level 60 UR. But while you are working on this, you're definitely going to want to keep stockpiling chalices and awakening materials. I know in a couple of videos in the past, I mentioned selling chalices, but I want to emphasize that really doesn't become a valid option for you until you're getting close to finishing your box. It is always, always a priority to use your actual chalices on what they're meant for, which is awakening, rather than just sell them for gold. So make sure that you keep a stockpile while you're working on your box. When you get close to finishing your box, then at that point you can start to think about it to free up some inventory space. Another really important one is awakening materials. And I want to say an important thing about these awakening materials is you're going to want to keep more of the later chapter awakening materials, like chapter 6, chapter 5, chapter 4, because you just use more of these from awakening than you do of the lower chapter ones. You can see right there, I'm only using 2, 3, and 5 versus the 6, 9, and 15 that I use of the chapter 6. So kind of keep that in the back of your head for the right stockpile that you want to keep for your awakening materials. And a lot of people ask me the question, is it worth buying the awakening materials from the actual village shops for gold? And I say, especially if you get both of those 20% discounts from the donation and from clearing the deathmatch, I say it absolutely is, just because of the time that it saves you. The amount of time that it saves you from farming awakening materials specifically, and how long it's going to take you to get that gold from farming, you know, books or whatever, it balances out to just make your life a little bit easier. I know some people might still want to farm their awakening materials themselves, which is totally fine, but it really is about what your goals are, and if you feel like it's going to make your life a little bit easier to just buy them from the shop, I don't think it's really that bad of a thing at all. Now, another really important thing is actually, in a sense, a mistake that I started to make for a little while that I slowly found out was not a very good idea, and you probably want to do it the other way around. And what you do not want to do is immediately when taking whatever units that you are working to UR, you don't want to just maximum limit break all your units right away. That's going to be extremely resource intensive. It's going to use a ton of your pendants, and it's going to use a ton of deathmatch boss materials. What I would prioritize doing, though, is eventually try to get all of your units up to UR level 60. That's not limit broken. And the amount of pendants that it takes to bring up to from SSR to UR is much, much lower than the amount of pendants that it's going to take to go from level 60 to level 80. Level 60 to 80 takes 4 times the amount of pendants that just limit breaking, or I guess it's just evolving from SSR to UR is going to take. So, you know, if you take 1 unit from level 60 to level 80, you could take 4 SSRs from SSR to UR, if that makes sense. Now, obviously, you still absolutely want to limit break and take all the units that you use to level 80. That's still very, very important. Make sure you do that. But I'm talking about the units that you don't really use a whole lot of. You want to really get your box to UR, eventually get them up to level 60, and not only is that going to end up getting you a bunch of your box combat class for the actual HP buff, which is going to help out your main team, of course. But it's also going to unlock a lot of costumes, and obviously makes your box look nice, going to help you get achievements and all that sort of stuff. So that should generally be more of a priority than taking every level 60 that you get to level 80 right away. Now, something else that you're going to want to do is once you do work on your units, you're obviously going to want to equip them with a set of gear, or as much gear as you can. You can see that most of my units, even though I don't really use them a lot, they do have gear equipped on them, and that's just simply for account combat class, just for my box. It's also there if I ever do decide to work on gear in the future. The gear that you actually end up equipping on your units doesn't actually count towards the storage of your regular gear. So I've got like 200 storage spots here, but all the equipped gear doesn't count towards it. So you can almost think of it in a way as additional gear storage as well, which is really nice. So if I want to work on gear in the future, I can always not just look at the gear I have in my storage, but look at all the gear that I have equipped, even across units that I don't really end up using a whole lot. So that's something else that you absolutely want to work on. And also, very importantly, once you do end up getting the requirement to unlock their passives, make sure that you do that because that's going to end up giving you an additional 1,000 combat class as well. So you can see here, 16,000 combat class. Usually once you get them to 6-star awakened, level 60, you are, even if they don't have much gear or any gear at all equipped, you should be right around that 16,000 point, and you're going to want to grab their unique. Really easy to accidentally forget about that. That's going to boost up your account combat class by quite a bit. So now the very last thing that I want to end off this video on is your limited bottleneck resources. After playing the game for a really long time, working on my account, what are the things that I have generally found myself, as well as other people who have gone through the same thing? Like, what are the things that you find yourself short on versus what do you really end up having too much on? And the first thing I want to say is it really depends on if you are somebody who farms a lot of your boss battles and your death matches, or if you don't. And I would say, especially as we get costume upgrades in the future, you really want to make a habit of trying to at least do some of your death matches every single day, or help out your friends, whatever best way is going to work for you. You're going to eat through a ton of these boss materials as you limit break your level 60 units to level 80. It takes 50 of each of the 3 boss materials to go from level 60 to 80, so you're definitely going to need a lot of them. So that's something you might find yourself limited on if you don't really do a lot of boss battles and death matches. Also, you might end up finding yourself limited on awakening materials, just the simple ones that you need to awaken from chapters 1 through 6, especially if you don't end up farming the quest specifically, or if you don't end up buying them from the villages. That's why I say if it makes your life easier, you know what, go for it, especially if you've got that 40% discount. It's really not as bad of a price as you might think it is compared to how long it takes in order to actually farm them. The big one as well is your pendants, This is why I say I think the general strategy of trying to get as many units in your box to UR level 60 is better than just instantly trying to rush every unit that you take to level 60 to level 80, because you're going to burn through your pendants super, super quickly once you start taking a bunch of units to 80. Still take the ones that you need, but, don't take every unit that you don't use up to level 80 right away. It's just not worth the pendants and resources. So those are some of the materials that I, as well as other people, have experienced to be the more bottleneck ones, where you find yourself limited compared to a lot of the other stuff that you get. But anyway, I've thrown a ton of info at you guys in this video, and I've only covered 3 topics: gems, gold, and heroes. Still tons of other stuff to talk about when it comes to those long-term account planning preparations. So if you guys enjoyed this video and you want more videos like this in the future, please consider subscribing to the channel. Feel free to leave a like as well. It helps me gauge whether you guys want more of this in the future or not. And more videos should be popping up on the screen right about now as well. Feel free to check them out. More guides, tutorials, and fun videos just like this. They also might be in the suggested videos to your right or below. If not, though, have a great day, everyone. Take care, and until next time, this is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.